also was the co-founder and president of Embark Broadcasting, an advertising technology company that was acquired by Google. And he also served as president and CEO of Toucan Media. You can't hear me? Okay. Also served as president of AdForce. So we're here to hear Ryan's take on, is the ultimate aim of AI to replace God? Thank you, Ryan, for being here.
It's good. So I can be long-winded, so I got to figure out how long I want to do this presentation. But I want to get through a few slides, but then I really want to get to the Q&A and hopefully have some fun, provocative, controversial conversations about it. But it's going to be a lot of fun. First, it's great to see thank my family. I don't think I've ever presented anything in my entire career in front of my mom and my wife and my son. So I'm like nervous, and I don't get nervous in front of people. But besides them, it's fun to see other family and friends here. It's a small community. Nancy, I guess, our children, when we applied for Pegasus, she's a director of admissions, retired in 2020, I believe. But thank you, Stephen Pratt, for helping set this up. I was really, intrigued, and I was honored to, come here and talk about, faith and technology. I mean, I think the Faith Lab is, a very, noble and important thing that I think everybody of faith and every church should heavily invest in. We all should understand technology, especially of us who are defending Christ and defending our faith and, et cetera. So, yeah. So a little bit about that. So I moved to Newport Beach when I was 2, from the Valley. My faith and my belief started really through, again, pedigree through my parents. I grew up in our grandfather was a pastor in Assemblies of God. My great-grandfather was a superintendent of the Assemblies of God. So I was blessed, and I was blessed in that household. I was blessed growing up in a house of faith. And it's important, right? It is hard. It's hard as a parent, passing it on. My mom wrings my neck every single Sunday, right? Like making sure the streaming thing or the COVID, it's changed everything. But anyway, it's important that we still fight for it, and we have a very important job, right? So let's talk about technology and AI, and I'm going to do a little bit of background on just catching up. It's everywhere, right? We are overwhelmed with the talk of AI today. So I'm going to just give you, my opinion, a little bit of an update of what we're dealing with here, and then we're going to have some fun doing Q&A with Cindy, and we're going to, see where we can take this. All right, one second. Drum roll. There we go. All right, so is AI a fad, or is it? AI is a very big, important thing. Okay. It's as big of any industrial revolution, however you want to define those major steps in history when we've had a major significant technology, transition or breakthrough. And what has happened to society, good or bad, when those things are, and those technologies or fundamental changes in society are introduced. Many of us know some of them, right? We know the cotton gin, right? Or the Henry Ford and the manufacturing automation revolution. There's been some pivotal points in history when these events have occurred, right? Eli Whitney and the cotton gin, Henry Ford, the computing, obviously software, Mark Burnioff, right? Founder of Salesforce. And now today, like AI, right? What's so interesting about these different technologies in the past is how long it took for it to be introduced or invented until it became permeated throughout society, right? Now, obviously, today, we are fully interconnected, right? Every one of us. It's almost instantaneous. Good news or bad news or car chases or fake news, it's instantaneous, okay? This new technology, AI, is digital inherently. So it's like the perfect storm. It's the radical new technology, and it's infinitely almost accessible to everybody, okay? Probably everybody in this room has heard of ChatGPT, right, which really made AI personable, right? All of us, for the very first time, with very little knowledge or need of understanding, can start to play and experience the power of AI. And by the way, the first one that most people are experiencing is by far the most powerful version. right? Most people in this room probably weren't playing around with neural networks, right, or other forms of AI, right? Probably zero, right? But how many people in this room have actually used ChatGPT once? Okay? You prove my point, okay? This is both exciting and very scary, okay? It's scary because here's the interesting, look at the skepticism lag. You can also call it governance or compliance, right, support. Right now, there is very little, if zero guardrails, for the most part, for AI. Zero. You can read about it. Biden talks about it. They're starting commissions. This is the horse has left the barn, right? By the way, most of the technologies around AI are open source. So unlike the nuclear bomb, right? We always like to make a joke that most inventions is military, historically, or porn. I'm not kidding. You need a lot of bandwidth for porn, okay? And because of those pillars, the technology was controlled by a very small number of people, good or bad. Like a great nation state like the United States, or a scary nation state like, right, formerly Soviet Union, now Russia, right? But the difference now is everybody has access to these models. So that's something that one thing we're going to talk about is good or bad, as we go through the education, when this huge technology has been dropped on us, there's going to be carnage. There's going to be, and we're going in an election year, we're going to talk about this, fake news, right, fake voices, digital avatars. It's something that we're going to have to figure out here fast because AI is not going to be overly regulated. They're going to try, and unfortunately it's out there, so people who want to use AI for good or the bad actors and malicious intent are going to have access to these tools as well. So just, a lot of people have experienced some of these things, but just the big macro here is the speed at this was introduced to everybody, right? Just in this room, and by the way, the average demographic of this room, this is an average age demographic group, right, across the United States. This is not just the kids that are 20 years and older. There's more people who understand ChatGPT than a lot of people know social media. So that's how fast this is growing. My clicker died. Stephen, Stephen's fault. All right. So just speed up a little bit, is how fast is the AI advancing, right? AI has been around for a long time. There's been, again, rudimentary models that can, do, simple processing. We've been around the algorithmic universe for a while. We have calculators. AI and then AI, obviously, next generation of like neural networks. I'm going to use a few terms that I don't know how to say in a different way at times, but AI has been around for a while. But what's changed here is the perfect combination of infinite compute and processing power, right? And now you have hyperscalers like AWS and Azure. So when you have these models that take a tremendous amount of GPU or CPU, this is like the horsepowers of your computer, right? It takes a ton of horsepower and training data to make these AI models. What would have taken months and months and months and cost billions of dollars just 15 years ago, you can use your laptop now to train a model, right? And that's what's happening, the speed of it. And look at the results, right? The lineup here, right, the basis of 0 is human level, right, competency, right, or aptitude. Handwriting recognition, right? So what this slide is mostly about is the class of AI called cognitive science, right? When a human brain, so like a human brain, your cognition, right? If I look at something and say, that's a red tablecloth, right? You're wearing a black sport coat. That took a long time for a machine to do that, right? Well, we solved that really fast, right? You have image recognition, speech recognition. These are real. This is the reality we're in right now. If you guys have used ChatGPT and you upload like a PDF document to it and say, write me an analysis on it, right? Their first version is frankly probably better than any of you, unless you have a master's and a PhD, have produced, right? And then the brilliance of it is once you have that, like, let's say, summary or essay about a Shakespeare, right, play, you can say, well, rewrite it for a 6th grader, right? Oh, then up-level it for a PhD student, right? It's incredible. And we're going to talk a lot about why these new models, which are called large language models, is really the big breakthrough, okay? So images, now we're, there's what I've just described like of cognition has been around for a while. A lot of my business, when I started it really in 2014, almost everything we do of leveraging AI for both the government and for media and entertainment and the private sector has been mostly using cognition, right? It's trying to understand things and then make predictions once I have that knowledge base. We are all experiencing now a new class of AI called generative AI, right? Creation, okay? And I'm using that obviously as a provocative term which we're going to talk about, okay? That's what we're dealing now, and that's why it feels so powerful, like, geez, this is incredible. It's like I have this oracle that knows everything instantaneously. So obviously I just want to reiterate the speed of advancement from this, and it's accelerating faster and faster. So voice generation, put this in context, make it a little bit more personal for everybody, is we're going into election season, right? Everybody knows deep fakes, fake voices, fake avatars, right? We are all going to be bombarded for it. Now, I'm in that business. I make these models, right? But mine are for good, all right? So, meaning we work with a lot of movie studios, right? Probably a few dozen. We work with many people of notoriety and fame. And they come to us because they see value. They want me to create a synthetic voice. Why? Tom Hanks doesn't want to come back and do post-production if he has to do an edit. Or a radio host, let's say he has got a great voice and he likes doing his national syndication, but they want to reuse his voice to do local-based ads in every market. They don't want to he's not going to come back into the studio. So let's create a voice. So watch this real quick.
We are living through a period in history when journalism again faces great responsibilities and unexpected challenges.
Weather tonight is mainly clear and a low of 49 degrees. Tomorrow for St. Patrick's Day, 54 degrees and sunny at 6 a.m. and time for the Ellen K Show.
Ross Tucker hosting the Even Money podcast for DraftKings, an official sports betting partner of the NFL.
Hey, it's Steve Harvey. Chances are you probably in your car on the road right now, which means at some point you're going to have to fill up that gas tank.
Even though I've retired from calling Dodger games several years ago, my voice and passion for sports and great achievements in human history have me here with you today by a baritone voice.
So, yes, those are all synthetic voices, right? And by the way, those were made like 2 years ago, okay? And they took probably 50 hours of training data to make that quality of a voice. Today, I can make it with a few minutes, okay? That's the speed. So imagine that is a politician, right? Imagine that is your son calling you on the phone saying, I need money wired to me immediately, right? It happens all the time. Billions of dollars are transferred by good employees because their CEO or CFO called them and said, go do something. And it was fictitious, okay? So powerful technology, right? And it's again, who wields the sword, right? We've been saying for a long time, AI is like fire, right? It's probably one of the most powerful things ever. Fire, for many people, is the most terrifying thing ever, right? Destroys communities, lay waste to entire civilizations. But when you control fire, right? Wow, the world changed, right? Warmth, heat, cooking food, right? Disinfectants and the like. So let's make it a little bit personal. I've been talking for a while, and so let's see how this sounds off the cuff.
Good evening, and welcome to St. James Church and our discussion on AI. I would like to thank Reverend Cindy and her proactive leadership in creating the Faith Lab to discuss and contemplate the intersection of technology and faith.
Right. By the way, I did that myself flying home on a plane. So I can adjust the pitch, make it a little bit smoother, right? But just because I forgot, I wasn't quite prepared, so I had to do this when I was flying home from New York yesterday. So we had to work on it. So you heard me speak, right? But let's make it a little bit more challenging.
Buenas noches y bienvenidos a St. James Church y nuestra discusión sobre inteligencia artificial. Me gustaría agradecer a Reverend Cindy y su liderazgo proactivo por la creación del Faith Lab para discutir y contemplar la intersección de la tecnología y la fe.
So I took Spanish like basically my entire life, right? AP Spanish all the way through. I think I got straight A's the entire time in Spanish. I can't speak a word of it, so that's not me, right? I can tell you how to go to the bathroom, right, or what to eat. I mean, that's pretty much it. But now,
晚上好，欢迎来到 St. James Church 以及我们对 AI 的讨论。我要感谢
I think you get the point, right? So anyway, it's exciting, it's powerful, it's, you know, but again, everybody here can understand how this could be, right, misappropriated, right, misused, right, by, you know, and so you really need to think of who's wielding the technology, right? By the way, you all are. If you learn, every single person in this room can find an open source model, which means nobody really owns it, it's public, and you can go do these. You can build these models right now. That's what's both exciting and very scary, okay? So what I just showed you really is nothing, okay? Like that, I mean, what we're dealing with now, the big breakthrough, really for the most part, happened in around 2017, and it was at Google, and these brilliant data scientists came up with this entirely new class of models called transformer model. A transformer model, and I'm going to get to it, is completely cheating, okay? Because we tried to build something, and they say they don't, but we tried to build something that would act like the human brain, right? The ability to leverage neurons, right, to be able to learn, right, both synchronously and asynchronously, and they set out, can we do this like mathematically, right, with ones and zeros, and can I start to recreate? And this concept was called a transformer model. Our brain, hippocampus, is the part of your brain that is used for, one, transferring stuff in your short-term memory to your long-term memory, but more importantly, it's spatial awareness, it's situational awareness. You always think humans like, oh my God, my Tesla does not know that car's coming around the corner. Like, I can kind of see it, but it's like our intuition. Like, it's like the real-time processing of multi-events, right, at the exact same time. Intuition, all these things. It's kind of the hippocampus. Transformer models have that capability, okay? And I'm going to tell you how you train them, but to just give you perspective, like we've introduced this technology, right? And it's advancing so quickly. But while this is happening, let me tell you how complex and big God's creation of the brain is, right? And this is where introducing this technology when you really don't understand it can be very, very dangerous, okay? Just 2 weeks ago, some people in this room may have read it, but Google engineers working with Harvard University, they decided to create a high-resolution, detailed scan of the human brain, right? 1 cubic millimeter, right, is at 1,400 terabytes. If anybody know how big that is, right? And if you had to build a data center to process it, it would cost you to do a whole brain from that little, it would cost you $50 billion. And it would require a data center, I think that would be like 184 Walmarts put together. 1 millimeter, right? So the point here, which is scary, is we're still trying to figure that out, right? But we've introduced this large language model, like going crazy. It's happening. We all know OpenAI, we've heard ChatGPT, but there's hundreds of companies that are building these large language models. So what is it, real quick? The large language model, ChatGPT, has to be trained. You're like, where's all the information come from? Very similar to other forms of AI models, because of the internet, kind of a little bit to blame, right, in the early days of the internet, but so much of the data, what makes the internet so powerful is it's open. We can connect, we can communicate to different machines, right? Meaning I can search against, really any database or any server around the world. It's somewhat open, okay? Meaning the training data or the intelligence, if you want to call it that, was readily available for these groups. They could literally download, install, and use these systems and inference-based models to train these powerful models. But here's the thing, they're training it off of human knowledge, okay? To this point, okay? I'm gonna get to that thing. Everything that's going into these LLMs was basically aggregated, the training data, from our collective knowledge. And by the way, I mean, it is massive, right? Try to push it, right? If there's really any topic, I don't care how proficient you are, what an expert you are, play with it, push it. And you can now upload thousands of questions into ChatGPT or thousands of documents and say, analyze this. Or do a compare and contrast against the conflict in the Middle East in 1973 to today, right? And it's like instantaneous. It's brilliant. I mean, so this is the biggest advancement that I've ever experienced in my entire career by a mile, right? And we're not even getting out of the batter's box, for the baseball analogy, right? It was like, we're just getting started. And that's how fast this stuff is expanding. Adoption, I'm going to sort of speed through this a little bit, but companies are, every company in the United States, if you do not want to be around the world, it's going to be the haves and the haves not, right? My whole big position is everybody needs to understand these AI tools. Because if you don't, right, your enemy is going to, for sure, or your competitor in a business, right? Imagine being teachers right now. I mean, it's a very challenging thing when this powerful technology is in the hands of all these students. And, obviously there's tools out there and says, oh, I can tell, I can do an analysis and say that came from ChatGPT. Let's be realistic, right? The answer, in 6 months, it's going to be indistinguishable, okay? So the last thing I'll leave back, and I can go on for a long time, but I want to bring it back when we start doing Q&A, is, where is this going? Like, where is this going next? And it's like humans, like right now, what we kind of pitch is, we are in the loop, right? We're still part of the game, right? We can still choose to drive the car, right? When you start thinking about humans in the loop, on the loop, or out of the loop, right? I mean, sometimes, guys, we've chosen. We say, we want to be completely removed. I want to go full autopilot. I want Tesla to drive for me, right? You're putting, like, literally. And by the way, does anybody say, I think this is amazing. I have more my time back. I can work. I can socialize, right? But some people are like, I think I'm going to have my hands like this, right? Or versus like, no, I'm fine. I don't need anybody, right? So think of that concept is some of the legislation, it's important that humans are still part of the loop. It sounds crazy. You're like, well, I hope we are. But it is imperative, right? And that's where you're going to start to see more legislation coming down to try to govern this to a certain degree to make sure, hey, we have a place here, okay? So it's exciting, and then we're going to start a transition of like, how does this impact faith in our understanding of God? And, I mean, if you look at these things, some people are like, knowledge. If knowledge is everything, if that's your, if that's your perception of God, right, of infinite knowledge, I could sell you in 5 seconds why LLMs will like, oh, geez, it's getting close, right? So we'll talk about that. So that's my intro. Thank you. Sure.
Well, I've been waiting for this moment for a long time. We met probably a year ago, I think.
So.
And had a major, can you hear me?
That's me.
That's you. Okay, good, better. Anyway, we met about a year ago. Steve Pratt put us together because this church has been into AI since 2017, kind of trailblazing in the church world. And I just have kind of digested more and more about AI and natural language, and I do use ChatGPT, but not for my sermons. It's terrible at sermons.
She's going to start doing it in Spanish, though.
Yes,
so.
I'm good at Spanish, maybe Chinese. But that ultimate discussion felt like Ryan could really relate to the spiritual aspect of our challenges that we face, and certainly into the future, how we're going to use AI, how we're going to react to fake news as a church. And so in the discussion, we were basically saying, is this tool actually humankind trying to be the creator or actually be God? Will we solve all our health issues? Will we beat aging? Will we, eventually be able to, replicate it ourselves or whatever? Right now, I feel like I could record my voice and my child can hear me after I'm gone, just like Walter Cronkite, right? So it's kind of comforting in that respect.
I got approval, by the way, from their state.
So I guess I've been using the metaphor that AI has been around since the dinosaurs. Humankind has progressed and we hadn't discovered it. So all these kind of wonderful things are on, us solving the puzzle. So I just wanted to chat with you for a bit and get your take from Greta, maybe a spiritual aspect, how you feel where this is going and how the faith community can help or react to it, and where you stand in that.
So when you're 21 starting a company, like right out of school, and I know there's some Trojans here, but at UCLA, I mean, candidly, didn't think about it at all, right? I mean, I'm just, it's a new tool, and back then, I was in the advertising technology business. I apologize. I like to serve you ads, like wherever you go. It turned out to be pretty lucrative business, but there's a reason why so many of the most powerful AI companies are ad tech companies, right? And I'll get to that. And so why is that? It's fascinating. Google, right? Because when you have to try to ingest all this data and try to serve the right ad to the right person at the right time, right? In effect, it got inefficient without leveraging neural networks and advanced AI to make those predictions or basically to serve the better ads and better quality. But we sort of, to your point, we weren't planning or trying to use AI-based models and machine learning to solve the problem. Just, hey, that was the tool to go use. So I think part of this is, to your point where people, it was always there and you discovered it, is I don't think there was early on a conscious decision, and yes, the neural network, the concept of a neural network was fundamentally, the idea came from the concept of neurons in your brain, right? Can I, based upon the certain pathways that could, again, be linear or non-linear, can I train this model to retain information and potentially learn from it and act upon it? But like many technologies, it was very specific. I want to try to solve this problem. This is a great tool to make it more efficient. I think as these things got so advanced, then you start to look at, like the ramifications of this, right? Like
ethics.
And I think in human history, there absolutely is this, let's innovate for the sake of innovation, right? Like we want to push the envelope just because we can, right? 2001: Space Odyssey. Who's seen that movie? Okay. If you watch that show today, and I was to say there was a big shift of looking to the stars, and we figured out, we can't figure out space-time. So we're going to start looking micro, like internal. And I love that movie because, by the way, it's 2001, and they're right in distant galaxies. It's 2024, right? And we're still, Musk and Bezos are trying to figure out how to get off the planet, okay? But if you look in there, you also see the archaic robots, right? Our technology is way more advanced than the electronics and the technology in those ships. So my point is that this is where the whole thing is a little scary. We are still trying to figure out, right, the vastness or the expansion of the universe, and we can't figure out how, by the way, everything we see pretty much in the sky is really not there anymore because it's taking too long for the light to get to us. But we can't figure that out, but we can figure out really how the human brain works, right, with very limited knowledge. So I think the part is, with the combination of the model with the infinite capacity of compute and storage, basically the big cloud providers, that combination, I don't think many people predicted. And so now you're like, wait a minute, I can actually potentially simulate like a very powerful brain.
Right.
And so some people are excited about that. Are there people saying, fundamentally I believe is that we can try forever and we think we're getting close and we're infinitely far away, right? So we're infinitely far away from what the truth really is, but it's going to seem like we've made so much progress, right?
Yeah, I think the time frames from, let's say, the printing press to the industrial, it's been hundreds of years, and now it's like 2 years or 2 months. It's crunching down to the amount of knowledge we can have and adopt it. It's just so much faster than, the Industrial Revolution. And
I think with faith, if you take it into 200 years from now, the advancements in AI, right? I obviously believe we will never get closer to truly understand or being able to build technology that will even get close, right, to the infinite and vastness of God, right? But we're going to feel like we're getting there because we're so small, right? Like we think that LLM and this knowledge of like understand an essay is so powerful. I mean, in our small little world and in small minds, that, I mean, on a relative basis, it's a big thing. But, some people are saying, let them go find it. Let's go prove that God really exists, right? Let's go to him. Well, candidly, if we can't understand the universe and time space, like, I think we're probably far away from really understanding that truth.
Phew. Thank you. You made me feel so much better. Because a lot of us can't keep up with life right now. But I think it's fascinating how you've evolved as well. And it seems like you've, and I think you're very faith-based. You've evolved very quickly just reading your resume of like, what's next?
Oh, I just turned 50, although I don't look it. No. I'm tired. I've been doing this it's company after company. It never gets easier, by the way. It never gets easier, like starting the companies and all that stuff. But I'm along for the ride. It's like we are literally building and fixing and modifying the plane while we're flying it, right? Yeah. I mean, we all are. Every day we wake up, and whether you're using AI for construction or advancing. We do a lot of work with the Department of Justice and the DoD, right? I mean, it's just every day you're saying like, what's the next basic tool? Where is it going? I kind of touched on a little bit, and it's the part that's scary for me is because of the openness of these technologies. It by default it's going to be in the hands of people who want to use it maliciously, right? And I think we're going to experience some terrible things, right? That because of these technologies, and I can apply that to, everything. Nazi Germany with their huge advantage of arsenal, right, and weaponry. But then you look at that, and then the world kind of catches up. But this is, to me, as I mentioned earlier, fire. It's a tool. Like the people who, and let's start with the faith-based people, but let's just forget faith. People of good hearts and good nature. We better have better understanding and expertise of these tools because we know. Right, we know Satan followers are going to do that. Like we know malicious, malicious nation states are going to go all in, right? And they're going to try to use it for us. So this is the arms race of our time, and I think civilization, right, is going to, we're going to have to really deal with this.
Figure it out.
Figure this out, and it's going to have carnage. It's going to have carnage.
I want to pivot a little bit. In the Wall Street Journal the other day, it had an article about a gentleman who created friends. And so he could actually make an avatar of seriously a human being that looked like a friend, a blonde, a brunette, and some guys. And they have their own voice, and he's made it so that he's not lonely. So he has all these different people on his phone that he can say, I'm really feeling depressed right now. And then he'll pick the friend, and that they know how to cheer him up. Don't you find that a little alarming?
So GPT-4o,
right, which just came out.
Right, which just came out, is that? I mean, we're there.
Yeah.
I mean, and what's interesting is, they've gone through kind of these studies and these simulations, and people don't always want the one that just talks, makes you feel good, your friend,
right?
Because that's not how real people interact. And so what you're seeing is they have personalities, and the thing is, the machines evolve. Right, with you. So. Like my son's here. He's probably on his phone right now, not listening to me.
Guilty as charged.
Thank you. By the way, it's set up perfectly. Even before we have this large language model and this avatar, they're addicted to their phones, right? Yeah. Technology is really good. I know what next TikTok to put in front of you because I know for sure you're going to watch the next one. So, of course, if I put my new girlfriend on there, who's gonna evolve with me, I guarantee it. There will be people who are going to sue because they want to marry, right, their bot, and I guarantee you, it's going to happen. Yeah. Right? You're going to marry it, and they're like, how? Well, that's ridiculous. Like, why can't I? There's going to be an industry. We spend $50 billion a year in the United States taking care of pets. Yeah. Right. We're going to be spending 10 times that, right, taking care of your digital twins and your digital personas, right, 100%. Right? Meaning, what does that mean, Ryan? Well, it means you're out and about, you're going to hire a company that's going to continue to, like, either if it's not fully autonomous, like, manage your digital personas while you're gone. It's going to be, it's going to happen 100%. Because a lot of people are saying, you know, like, which we're nervous about, like, how technology and social media is impacting our kids is, why would they not want this bot, right? I mean, these kids are, I mean, they're so depressed these days.
Yes,
right?
that's my
if
point.
I introduce something
They're getting
that's going to
friends.
evolve with you, make you feel better about yourself, and it's going to learn with you, of course, everybody's going to have these relationships with these digital AIs.
So that's kind of why I wanted to talk about this, is how does the church respond to it? They want to marry their bot, and, you know, it stops right here. But I think that the thing that I'm trying to make the universal church, where I think we're way ahead of most faith-based communities, is that those are going to be serious questions for us. And then, what about community? Look at you all in here. We know each other, we love each other, but there's going to be people that this generation coming up needs that socialization. They need wisdom, because they're always taking for granted on, you know, this is a weapon, right? This can be very dangerous in the hands of a 7-year-old. So I think that I've been encouraged to have some sort of moral standard, and several years ago I sent you what we wrote several years ago, is the 10 Commandments of AI. And I noticed the Pope just came out with an ethics model that he's saying we need a Bill of Rights. And so I wonder where you think that will go. And the government just seems to be slogging through it.
Yeah.
Whenever I see Mark Zuckerberg, I don't know if I'm supposed to mention that, but he just sits there and he just knows everyone sitting behind him has no clue what he does.
Yeah.
It's kind of scary.
There's a lot there, but
Yeah. Sorry, I was like, I'm preaching. But the church, in the community aspect of it.
I think it starts, okay, again, people of faith, like, this is a very short period of our existence, right? Our life on earth. Okay, so back to the industrial, all these inventions, all the medicines we've done, outside of, you know, candidly being, you know, having complete malnutrition, have we extended our lifespan that much on a relative basis? Not much, right? So let's just take all these technologies, like, to end, right? I mean, is it fundamentally going to change our tiny period of, you know, of our existence in our human form here? So I think it starts with education, just like social media, education, make sure you're well equipped and you understand all the facts as a parent, right, as a leader. And you just, education is a good thing. Just trying to hide it and keep people away from it or not is, I completely disagree, right? You need to understand it, and you need to be, and make sure, communicate with your children is, you know, listen, being addicted to social media and having no physical interaction, trust me, there's a reason why everybody's depressed. Right? There's proof points everywhere that there's things are broken.
Right.
So I think everybody has their own personal way of governance. I think it starts at, like, families, right? I mean, we're going to take care of ourselves first. I'm not going to wait for my government to tell me how, you know, I should or should not use AI. So I think, again, there are no rules here, basically. So it has to start with us. It has to start with you and I. It has to start with our families. It has to start with us as business and corporate leaders. But you're going to see all these rules come out. And remember, the technology, the second these rules come out, the technology is going to be light years ahead of the rules. So, you know, and I think longer term, right? I mean, you know, this is, you know, we're here for a very short period of time on a relative basis. The entire, you know, and it doesn't matter how exciting technology is and all these things, it's not going to make you live forever, and it's got nothing to do with eternal life.
True. And with that, I thought maybe we could open it up for some questions.
Sure.
Okay. I'll grab the mic. Anyone? Can you come over here? I guess I could wind you down. Hang on. Oh, is it on?
I'm first.
There we go.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, again.
Hello? Oh, it works. Thanks so much for coming and talking with us and kind of enlightening us to something that's going to change our life.
Brad, can you put that closer?
How about that?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for coming here and talking about us, introducing to a subject that's going to change our lives more than we even have an idea. You mentioned about no rules. Yeah, there won't be rules, I don't think. I can see first step you also talked about where we'll be dealing with avatars, talking with avatars, replacing relationships in some form or another. Then I see the next step is we're going to be basically replaced by them, by tech, by innovation, and eventually the thing with avatars and IA concerns me is that up until this point in history, we've created every step. We have created industrial revolution. We've created airplanes, cars. We've created the internet. However, with IA, eventually they will create themselves. What's your thinking on that part?
It's happening already. So when I was talking about like the training data of these models, they've run out of data to train. So they're now using, ironically, AI to create more synthetic training data. Second thing is most of these training data is based basically on not just human knowledge, but human understanding of how things work. Physics, right? Like concepts of boundaries, two-dimensional, three-dimensional, etc. They're now coming up with concepts of training data, right, that removes the shackles, right, of human understanding, right, or meaning the way we interpret the boundaries, right, of physical and properties. What I mean by that is if anybody's seen the movie Inception, okay, and I talked about this earlier, right, they are trying to push the envelope, right, because they basically say that the machine has infinite more capacity than the human brain does, right? And if we can, but it's got a limitation of knowledge, so let's unleash it. So a couple things there is, it's already happening, so they're already using AI to create more training data. And I think the scary thing is, and again, we as a society, we love recreating what we see in movies, right? I mean, Star Trek, if I put it out in front of you, right, in 30 years, we're bugs to a light, like I gotta go do it, right? I mean, we've seen this before, right? We've put it out there, Skynet from Terminator. That's like the one that's all celebrated. It's gonna happen. So, and the question is, are we gonna be able to control the machines when they find us as humans completely inefficient, right? Or irrelevant in certain areas, okay? It may not be, my life, or may not be my children's life, we're gonna run into that. It's gonna happen at some point, and, we'll see what happens, right? We'll see what happens. Maybe, it's scary, but is it the new form of war, right? I mean, is this, and you can say it, is this kind of God's plan, right? Like when you get too close to the sun, right? And that's what we're trying to do. So you guys created it, this is what happens, right? So again, all I can say is, unfortunately, the technology pretty much does exist in a very rudimentary form to do that now. How this plays out, I'm telling you right now, it's not going to be government legislation that's going to stop it.
Well, thank you for your answer and for being here. We appreciate it.
Right here, Brad, behind you.
Hi, thank you. I'm going to come at this from a slightly different angle, not the big apocalyptic fear. I'm a university professor, so in a way this is hitting home, and I just want to share something that it kind of keeps me going all the time. I've been teaching since 1995, and I have never seen an answer that looks like another answer unless there's been cheating. And that's a lot of students. So each of us is so incredibly unique that if you ask the same question the right way, where you make people think, they don't answer it the same way. And so my concern with AI, and of course students are using it, and I've even played with it, and I'm sure not with the super good models. When they hand something in by AI, we can kind of tell because it's super flat and it can't get all the stuff behind the paywall, etc. So my concern is, and I bring up the example of everybody being unique because of their experience. My concern is it will settle for what the AI can produce, which even if it's really good, it's just rehashed. I mean, not for a scientific problem, but even for a scientific problem, because it's not based in a human body and a life of experience and a family and a social network, the answers it's going to give are all derived on answers that have already been out there, right? Can it, like you're suggesting,
Yeah.
it can move to its own thing, but its box is smaller than our box. And so I'm just wondering what you think about that.
I think humans are lazy anyway, so I think
Right.
we regurgitate stuff all the time. You know, I think we gave up trying to understand how math works, simple math for many of us, and we just use the calculator, right? And as we know, there's many different ways to solve a problem. So I think, unfortunately, that's already happened. I do think, unfortunately, the models are getting sophisticated enough that it will be more challenging for teachers and others to discern what's real and what's been synthetically developed. But remember, I was touching about the training data. There's a reason why a lot of the answers are somewhat similar with lack of depth or variety, is because there's a limit of the training data. And remember, a lot of these models are trying to cut down on quote unquote what they call hallucinations, right? They're not trying to, if you're Google and you want to use, instead of using search and get a list of search results, you want to have a conversation back to you, right? You don't want gibberish. You want, right? So they want to remove hallucinations, and they want it to be grounded in truth, right? So when you're seeing that more homogeneous, right, representation of the results, that's kind of on purpose based upon the model. So imagine now, same problem, but I allow it to hallucinate, right? You're going to see more variety, and therefore, and some people argue like, well, that's part of me. That's part of, like, it's how I ask the question, which is what a lot of people are saying. The prompt. Mm-hmm. So when you type in the prompt is becoming the creativity, not the output. Right?
That's
and
right.
that's something radical we need to think about.
Ryan, could you define hallucinate in AI?
Hallucination is when there's a gap in the model, so it's trying to answer a question. You know, let's say it's a large language model. It's brilliant. They actually can piece the words. Google Gemini is different. Sorry, a new tip for it. But the ChatGPT, 4.0 for the most part, is just brilliant on building the sequence of the words in real time. It's just incredible. Like, but when they look at the probability of the next word, they take in like infinite knowledge of like what's the best word for the right context at the right time, right? And but it's incredible how fast it is. Gemini, by the way, looks at the whole problem set now. Sorry, what was the question?
What's hallucinating?
Hallucination. Hallucination is when there's a gap. So think of it like a confidence score. So it's about to say something it doesn't really know, and it makes up stuff. And you're like, well, how does it make it up? It tries to find something that's adjacent or closest to the correct answer, right? And so that's where a lot of the times is you can what you call ground the models into a very limited data set, and so it doesn't hallucinate at all, and it will tell you like it burnt, versus, again, I like to say take the shackles off and you want it to completely hallucinate.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Anyone else? It's family.
Yes, we're going to go to dinner after this. No.
Hi. First of all, thank you. And I was kind of blown away because I learned about Moore's theory of relativity in college, and I cannot believe the way that it is coming into fruition. It's blowing my mind. But I guess my question for you as a Christian is, what do you see AI as the biggest threat to Christianity, to Jesus Christ, to us as Christians? And like, in what way do you see that as a threat to us or as a positive?
For those who believe the omniscient God, that's infinite knowledge and wisdom, as a part of, I think that you're going to start to there's going to be a lot of people who are going to believe that this machine has all the answers for me, and it's going to be seductive, like technology always does, and it's going to seduce you into, you're just talking about the fictitious girlfriend who's going to be bought. But because it's going to cater to you, right? And it's going to unfortunately create a religion, right? That you're going to start get false idols, false gods of the bots. So I think the biggest challenge is that, I think it's going to start to create confusion and questions and conflict for people and saying, like, I'm getting better answers from this than I am from Cindy or my group. And so I do think that they're like, for example, I would love to see trained LLM models, right, that we participate in. Like, we put the training data in, right? Like, push the envelope, right? Yes, by the way, the entire Bible, as you can appreciate, is in there. But again, it's along with everything else. So I think, it's a good question. I think I just think that at least for people who, again, look up for that portion of what they view God, Christ, whatever your faith is from a knowledge perspective, I think that part this is going to be personal and it's going to dazzle you. And I think that's going to be very seductive.
I have always turned to Revelations as my guide, possibly in the future. And so this is definitely in the future. So if we look at the book of Revelations, how can we pull from that what God wants to protect us when the second coming comes from all this stuff?
Now it's getting hard. Well, and don't get me wrong, but a lot of people are struggling for a long time, like talk about hallucinations, right? Okay, so I think you're stumped me. I don't know. I think I think it's going to be personal, subject to interpretation of these technologies of how you view what the future is going to hold, right? I think again, if you're going to be crossing over into when Christ is returning, and I think. I think it's going to be. I don't. Yeah, you try to do it. I don't know how.
Am I on? Good? No, I'm on this. Okay. I think you're right. I think it's going to be personalization of religion, and that there is going to be a sector of society that's going to be dazzled by that type of theology. I feel part of the answer here tonight is the church, the universal church, needs to feed the data to AI, right? It always needs content. And so it's up to us to have really deep-rooted theology being fed to AI instead of, maybe some of the charlatans out there that shall not go named. But I do think it is a little bit of a collision course, but I think if we raise up leaders, and that's what I've asked St. James to constantly be, to raise up leaders that can speak to that and can speak to, kind of the do's and don'ts of technology to preserve the faith. And one of the biggest things that you can't get out of AI is this room and having flesh and blood sit next to you and the soul of your person be able to, meet each other. Because that's what you said about AI to me is you can go on ChatGPT, but there's no depth. And it's great if you want a quick, fix. Like I always put it up there for grammar because I'm terrible. Ask Kent, I never have enough commas. But I think the biggest thing is it's going to take a lot of work for the church, for spirituality or faith-based communities to go alongside instead of being left behind. And then I think that we'll be fine. But who knows?
There's something we don't know yet, right?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So I would just ask you a couple of questions in terms of how do we start? How does this population start to understand the technology of AI? Like, what is the first step? And it is a tool. I did hear an amazing discussion about the microwaves. We were all scared of microwaves. No one thought they would ever cook again. That was going to take over. The calculators, like no one would ever be able to add numbers together. So AI as something that does not take away from ourselves, our personality, and our faith, but it actually adds to it in a beautiful way. Like, how would you speak to that?
I completely agree, right? And I think you need to believe that this discovery is as much ours as anybody else, and I do think it's a killer tool. So there is a lot of great lessons and tutorials out there, okay? Almost every big group, by the way, who's peddling AI has something. I would encourage you to go to Google, right? They will do like basically AI for dummies, and they'll walk you through very simply, like step by step of making you understand, and then you get to a point and try this, and they'll have a tool that says create a draw me a picture or a movie with Ryan riding a silver horse down a sunny beach, and it'll get to that point, and it'll explain you how that's working. LinkedIn Learning, whoever's on LinkedIn, they have tons of training materials on LinkedIn. I can definitely follow up and give you some tutorial guides and again, you can continue to advance. So you can start very rudimentary, just a general understanding of AI, and then you can continue to progress, and 99% of this is all free, right? So we'll follow up and give you some examples, right, for it. Not for dummies, I take that back. So we'll say for rudimentary. Sorry.
So I'm going to ask a slightly different question. When industrial automation came in, it eliminated a lot of what we call blue-collar jobs.
Yep.
Right? Which is a major part of the reason why the middle class lost, because there's so much competition for what was left in terms of industrial-type jobs. It seems to me that AI is really going to be impacting what we think of as white-collar jobs. And do you have just thoughts on, like, the ramifications from a societal perspective, and what could we do to, just from I hate to use the word political, but what do we do as a society when a huge number of jobs are just going to disappear because AI takes over?
I'll send you the expanded version of this deck that I gave. And so, back to the industrial, what they don't think is like, yeah, it was automation, but they started to produce so much cotton that it actually was a catalyst for a huge explosion of slavery, not the other way around, which is interesting, right? A lot of people don't think that, like, oh, it removed the labor. No, it didn't. It produced a product then, right? So there's definite, what we were all taught, and there's definitely some huge negative consequences that we really didn't think about. It's a great question. You're absolutely right. This is the first time in a very long time that these tools, creating ad copy, right? I mean, we're all dealing with it. You guys are all using the tools, right? People, like, I got my degree in this, and this tool is better than anything I can produce. So it's happening right now. If you look at the labor market, is still very tight, right? The unemployment is incredibly low. But if you dig a little deeper, where you're seeing the largest increase in unemployment is white-collar jobs, right? If you look at who's being terminated and let go at some of the big tech companies, right? It's that middle management that's getting eliminated, right? And they're planning ahead. In all these big HR meetings, they're thinking about a 5-10-year plan on, are you really going to need this structure of an employee base? So the problem with the speed of this, and this goes back to how quickly this technology was introduced, it's like we don't have time to upskill ourselves, right? It's already out there. I don't, like, what happened? I don't have time to, like, and every college and every place and every curriculum is trying to figure out, like, how do I educate you? So there's going to be radical changes in labor and organizations because of the different forms of AI. And I keep going back to, like, that is critical, right? And that's why you're starting to see companies like, that we're saying, listen, I'm going to help you get the LinkedIn turn. I'm going to put up funds to help you. Meaning, we want you to be the wielder of the tool, and if you don't become the wielder of the tool, there is a chance that your type of job career is going to be completely eliminated. Right? Now, over time, you've seen opportunity from that, and so therefore, right, the market keeps getting bigger. CGI is a good example, right? The technology of CGI, Return of the Jedi, when you started using, right, graphical instead of, right, everybody thought that was it. Film industry's done, right? By the way, it did have some major ramifications of set designers and stunt work and stuff like that, but the size of the industry, because of the lowering of cost production and speed, it rose. Labor is going to have to change. People are going to have to, there's going to be completely categories of jobs that are going to be completely eliminated. And that's where laws and governance can come into play, right? Mandating education, mandating companies. There's the, oh geez, what am I missing? There's the law, like in California, if based upon your size of your company, if I want to let go more than 50 people, right, I have to give pre-advance notice, 60 days or whatever it is, the WARN Act. right? You're gonna have concepts like that, right? You're gonna make decisions, right? Did they have the appropriate time for upskilling, up-leveling, stuff like that? So I think, again, it is gonna radically transform what was, to your point, blue-collar, right, workers. It is impacting white-collar, and you're gonna start to see companies, which they are doing, and legislation push forth agendas for upskilling and up-leveling.
How do you protect your intellectual property, your work? Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a given that you're not going to put it on open models. You're going to have a closed network. How are you going to deal with that going forward?
It's a great question. So many different ways. People's identity in California is such an interesting. So in California, it's statutory law that you own your name and likeness in this state. I think there's one other state. I think it's New York. In the rest of the country, it's case law. So if somebody rips off your name and likeness in California, literally, I can sue you. There was a Home Depot commercial. Ed Harris, the actor, used to do the voiceover for Home Depot commercials for years. They didn't come to terms on his renewal contract, so they found another voice actor that sounded just like him, and they used him. He sued Home Depot and won like $10 million, okay, in California. Also, if you're a celebrity, you want to die in California, right? Because you get put into a registry for your name and likeness, right, in perpetuity, okay? It's fascinating. So I answer the question first is, you're thinking of just like corporate data and like no, I mean, it starts with this room. There's gonna be, lawyers are gonna make a fortune in this, as they always do, but like the conflict of copyright, is exploding. You're right, we will never, in our guidance is, we never put or allow our employees, ever put any of our proprietary data into the prompts of any public large language model. Not just the training data that got there in the first place, I'm talking about the prompts. They're like, oh, I want them to analyze all my earnings reports and throw them in there, right? Or if it's something proprietary. I think there's a ton of discipline and corporate governance around the right language model that you want to use for your company, right? Is it, to your point, in a secure environment? Am I sharing any data, et cetera? So I think it's not just corporate data and IP. I think it's personal data and IP as well. That answers the question.
Hello.
Hi.
Cindy, I really appreciate what you two said. As Christians, our responsibility to feed into it, to understand it, to drive it, not shy away and let others control kind of our message. But in my organization or the industry I'm in, it's trades, HVAC, plumbers, electricians, and they're brilliant men who have become CEOs and presidents. And they have latched onto this, and now they're writing policies and philanthropy ideals by feeding questions. And what's coming out is like trash. It's the dumbing down of an organization, because they're not thinking, they're not generating it. What does this really mean to us? And so I'd like your comment on how we need to use it responsibly, almost like in the olden days, a secretary would set a draft and the next guy would pen that. But how we really need to contemplate what's coming out and form it to what we want it to say, or I don't know, how to make it more thoughtful. If you have a comment.
Yeah, I mean, my only response to that was, and I go back to the simple calculator, right? I mean, we don't really, can any of us really enjoy doing long division anymore, right? Or we kind of said, just let it, it's innocuous. It's not really, it's not going to make me a bad person because I really can't do it anymore, right? For example, but this is a whole nother level. That's what we were kind of talking about here, right? I mean, it's now a whole nother level of cognition that, again, we've proven time and time again, we will be lazy. If there's something cheap, efficient for us, we will absolutely use it, and even if it's more homogenous and more provincial.
Actually, I'm glad to see your son is still playing with his phone. my spouse and I, we have 3 teenagers, and he always complains that they're on the phone constantly, so it makes my heart feel good that your son has the same issues, because my spouse blames me all the time for our kids being on their smartphones constantly. I actually, on Wednesday up in LA, had to give a presentation about kind of my career. I'm a food scientist by education. And I was honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award, and they wanted me to speak about where I was in the mid-'80s and where we're going. And of course, I had to end with how artificial intelligence has impacted my industry and our people. And we work with all the universities that are big in food science, like University of California, Davis, Cal Poly's, and so on. And the thing with artificial intelligence for our industry is a couple things. It's perfect at helping us identify pathogens. It's helping us with food safety. It's helping us solve our number one issue as a food scientist. How do we feed 9.75 billion people by 2050? But what it can't help us with yet, and I think it's part of what Cindy used the word soul, but I'll use the word human imperfection, or the unpredictability at times of human nature. So our industry, we try to even predict what our future food trend's going to be, and it fails miserably. It hasn't been able to get it right yet, because the freedom of choice is hard to put into artificial intelligence, or is it not? That's kind of what I'm kind of curious about. I think for everything else we're doing in science, it's going to help us. It will help us produce more food. And as a matter of fact, actually, we can feed today's world population and the future if we just didn't waste 60% of our food. So we already can do it. So through AI, it's teaching us how do we do it. And then you just have to deal with governments and how you get the food to the people. That's probably the biggest problem we're ever going to have. To the people, that's the biggest problem. But how do we get that unpredictability of the human nature? Because I look at my 3 kids, I look at our family, I can never predict what they're going to do or say. And you call it soul, you call it freedom of choice, but how will I just don't think, because that was one of the things that we're working with actually UC Davis, is how do you deal with that unpredictability and that choice and moodiness and things that you can't even think, and then you have to deal with global climate change and all these things that come in there, and it's kind of, I don't know, do you think we'll ever be able to do that?
So in one respect, you want it to hallucinate more, if I can use that term?
It has to.
Okay. Yeah, because like prediction's interesting. There's like, what's going to create the next viral superstar, right? Trust me, there's so many companies trying to figure out like why is, Jake Paul, existential breakout viral property. They've tried 1 million times to predict, right? It's an adage, right? What made the great, song hit? Was it a killer song or tons of airplay? Well, the obvious answer is a combination of both, right? So I think back to training data is limited by default. So when you're trying to ask these things to predict, are you asking it truly to predict, or do you want it to come up with potential plausible concepts? Because my point is, if you ask a model to give me 25 potential scenarios, it's when you see something, observability, you automatically start following that path, right? So again, what I'm saying is that it's going to give you 25 probability paths of what the future is going to look like. That's the fascinating part, is then the human brain will come in and say, I don't necessarily agree. I like that one, right? And I think your point, you already touched on it. Humans have to be part of the loop, because if you don't be part of it, it's literally going to get homogenous. It's like a recessive genes, right? Keep rising to the top.
So in our industry, we're saying it's going to be more people needed because of AI, not the opposite. We need more.
That's great to hear.
And so in our industry, they're already started, and it's just you're going to have to shift from what you're doing. But we already need more people. We don't have enough. And you have to understand what you're looking at, what you're trying to do. But we don't have enough people educated for that. And to save money, because you have those 25 choices, but you can't afford to do each one of those. So you really, how do I get it done with 1 and maybe 2?
Yeah.
But, most businesses and universities, they're cheap. They don't have the money. They have 25 choices. They really want to, how do you pare it down? So I think we're safe in that fact that I don't think AI is ever going to produce us, because we're so complicated, and thank God above, I think we are that way.
Yeah, I always think humans are going to be but we need to be present. Like, we need to, force ourselves to be in the loop, right?
Or have a priest that forced them.
Yeah.
Getting back to the calculator analogy, I was teaching middle school math when calculators first came out, and there was a big controversy about whether the kids should be allowed to use them. And so I gave the kids some kind of problem to do, and they asked if they could use their calculators, and I said, sure. And so this one girl says to me, I've tried addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, and nothing works. And I said, now try thinking.
Hello. This is my CEO, no big deal. But I did come up with a couple questions in mind, and one that'll be interesting coming from my angle is you have a diverse crowd here, some my age, some a bit younger, and a lot of people who are a little bit past my age will be worrying about this question with their children and whatnot. What are some examples of fields of study or directions to take that you would advise either young people or parents of young people in preparation for these developments? What are there things that perhaps we aren't yet buzzwords that you've come across that, I think this is going to be a college major in 5 years, that might be worth, or et cetera, and what are some kinds of even broader, not necessarily college majors, but directions in life that are maybe going to be more along the lines of the kinds of position and careers or vocations that are going to be created?
Yeah. So, CEO of NVIDIA, right? One of the, I'd say fundamental companies that it's helped powering, right, the training of AI. He's literally, and somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but there's an element of truth when he's saying, he says, listen, do not have your, the obsession of computer science degrees, right, of coding. Just don't go into a different field. What he means by that is these large language models now have been trained on so much code that you're starting to see companies have anywhere from 10 to 50% of their production of code is now generated by the machines, right? AI. And so the irony is, for companies, engineers typically are the most expensive, highest to heart. So there's a business demand that says this is ridiculous. We got to bring some equilibrium back into the equation here, and so you're seeing that. The point is, and again, and this goes back to creativity, right? Like the arts, like singing, things. And yes, you're seeing, AI. I was going to play a song, and maybe I'll play it at the end. That's completely AI generated, but I really think that so much of what makes us human, right, is not the calculator, right? And when I say coding, for those who are engineers in the room, there's a big difference of being somebody who's great at math and a good architect who also codes versus a production coder, okay? And I'll say it, a production coder, in my mind, is somebody who learned how to speak Spanish, right? But there was no change in creativity. It was me translating my voice, right? So be the architect, right? Be creative. Fundamentally learn the skills, because if you're doing something that pure process automation is going to eliminate, you're probably going to have an issue. Let me give you a creative example. So the writers' strike that we had. We live in California. There was the SAG strike, the actors' strike, and there was the writers' strike. We have some good friends that are writers, and there's about 12,000 in the guild for writers in Hollywood productions. And I said, your opinion, what's going to happen? He's like, well, Ryan, it's for sure it's going to be cut in a tenth, right? We're going to have 1/10 the number of writers. But you know who they all believe? My cousin's a cinematographer, right? Eric Steelberg. He's done some really good movies, some really bad movies. But he'll do the same thing. He goes, the people who are most scared of AI are the people who are not working right now. I swear, that's a quote from him in the industry, right? And by the way, he is, for the cinematographers, on the filming side, right? He's basically the chairman of the AI practice. So my point is, if you're getting simple answer is, I'm not saying don't understand STEM, right? I'm saying we all need to understand how the calculator works, but I firmly believe that if you understand the science and math, you're always better wielding the tool. So if you want to keep going into that field of STEM and computer science and mechanical engineering, right, you better understand you're going to be competing or leveraging a tool. But again, if you have a creative side, you can draw, you can sing, go for it, right? Because the world's going to be different, right? And I think there's going to be places for everybody.
Okay, we have time for one more question.
Thanks, Cindy. Thank you. This has been excellent, by the way. I really appreciate your time and your input. I wanted to take my question in a different direction if I could, and you have referenced humanity a couple of times. So if I could look at this from a different perspective. I see AI as, well, just another form of life that's coming. It's a new consciousness. It's a new form of a living being. I'm not suggesting it's either inferior or superior to us. I just think it is an is thing, and I rather think that it's inevitable. And so as this new form of life, I'm just wondering, within your industry, there would be a couple of conversations. I'm wondering, how far out are we? Ethical responsibilities that we might have to these entities, not just them to us, but us to them. And is there a conversation within your industry, then the lawyers are going to get involved? At what point are there going to be rights and responsibilities for the AI beings themselves? Just curious if those conversations have come to the industry.
I think we're a long ways away from truly having, I'd say, legislation and governance around that. I mean, there's, what he's kind of getting to is, there's AI, and then which is generally very narrow, right? They're brilliant, but they're narrow. You're talking about general intelligence, right? And AI, AGI, right? Artificial general intelligence, which is truly self-awareness, right? And people are like, like the Turing test, those who in computer science, like whether you could prove whether something was real or not, by the way, it's gone. It doesn't work anymore, right? The Turing test can no longer tell you if it's a machine or not. So it's to your point, it's 100% inevitable. There are people, because when you say it was always there and you're discovering it, which was kind of like her first point, they believe that, to your point, no, this is where we're supposed to be going. Right? Like, this is human knowledge. Like, from everything we've collected, we built these things. Why are we saying that, it's not human, right? In effect, it's a human invention. We created it. It's modeled after our brain. And so, again, it's a great question. I do not think legislation, right, is going to be, because our world's changed. I mean, we have corporations that are way bigger than many nation states, right? And there's reasons why they've distributed themselves all over the world, right? I mean, we're trying to force China to force the sale of TikTok. So again, I keep going back to is, every company. The Linux Foundation is one of the ones that I respect a ton. That's, I think, just privately, and we're a member of it. Microsoft's a member of it. Google's a member of it. We contribute money to it, and it's trying to, because we're not waiting for our government to come up with our AI ethics. It starts, again, you as an individual, me as a leader, me as my policy as a company, and then, because we all know, I mean, this is pretty exciting but also scary stuff, that it's got to be self-regulated first, because there's no politician that I know that's going to, tell me how, or, I mean, it's embarrassing for them to be putting the policies of how we should be using AI or not using AI. So I don't know, it's hard to answer your question, but I agree with you that it's coming. I mean, every test we could think of, what makes somebody human from a brain capacity and cognitive perspective, the machines are going to get there. I mean, guys, it just happened. The bomb was just dropped with ChatGPT. How long ago? It's been October. So it's been 18 months, right? I mean, it's advancing. By the way, Moore's law. Everybody heard of Moore's law?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Right? Speed. It's obsolete now, right? The innovation curve is faster than Moore's law. So just now extrapolate that with increased power and capacity. Right. It's going to be really exciting.
Well, Ryan, we have a tradition at St. James. We like to mug our speakers.
Oh, mug. I love it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's awesome.
Thank you. So my son was paying attention, so any follow-up questions, you could go ask him.
Thank you all for coming tonight. Stay and linger if you like. There's, I think, cake left over, so please enjoy.